An exhausted nurse helped a dying patient, not knowing she just saved the life of a lost queen. The irony of this truth lingered in the air like the antiseptic scent that clung to her faded blue scrubs as Emma Matthews shuffled down the fluorescent-lit hospital corridor at 3:47 a.m. 36 hours into what should have been a 12-hour shift, her body moved on autopilot, powered by lukewarm coffee and the stubborn determination that had gotten her through 7 years in the ICU. Emma's sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, each step heavier than the last. The weight she carried wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was the crushing accumulation of loss that had defined her past year. First dad to cancer, then her fiancé to someone else, and now her mother's advancing dementia meant she barely recognized Emma on the rare days she could visit between shifts. The hospital understaffing crisis had stretched everyone thin, but Emma volunteered for extra shifts that others refused. What was waiting at home anyway? Just an empty apartment and memories that echoed off bare walls. Matthews. The charge nurse's voice cut through her fog. Room 512 needs attention. Stats dropping, family declined, end-of-life measures. Emma nodded, swallowing the familiar taste of dread. Another death. Another hand to hold as life slipped away. Another family to console while keeping her own grief locked tightly inside. Room 512 was dimly lit, the steady beep of monitors providing a soundtrack to the inevitable. The patient, female, mid-60s according to the chart, named Sophia Renault, lay still beneath thin hospital blankets. No family present despite the earlier mention. Emma checked the monitors, noting the declining oxygen levels and irregular heartbeat. The woman had been admitted 3 days ago, unconscious and without identification, found collapsed in a hotel lobby downtown. Her fingerprints weren't in any system, and the expensive but unmarked clothes she wore provided no clues. "Hello, Mrs. Renault," Emma said softly, knowing the woman probably couldn't hear her. She believed in speaking to her patients anyway, especially the dying ones. "I'm Emma, your nurse for tonight." The woman's face was gaunt but elegant, with high cheekbones and silver-streaked dark hair splayed across the pillow. Despite her condition, there was something regal in her features, a dignity that even approaching death couldn't erase. Emma checked the IV, adjusted the blanket, and then, instead of leaving to complete her charting as protocol would suggest for a DNR patient, she pulled the chair closer to the bed. The woman's hand was cool to the touch, her fingers adorned with a single ring, platinum with an unusual crest that reminded Emma of something she couldn't quite place. "You're not alone," Emma whispered, enfolding the stranger's delicate hand in both of hers. "I'm right here with you." It was what she wished someone had said to her father in his final moments, when she'd been stuck in traffic, arriving 5 minutes too late to say goodbye. She wouldn't let this woman cross that threshold in isolation, even if she was a stranger. The steady beeping faltered, growing more erratic. Emma knew the signs. These would be the woman's final moments. "It's okay to let go," she murmured, her thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of the woman's hand. "Wherever you're going, I hope there's peace waiting for you." A single tear escaped, tracking down Emma's cheek as she thought of her own father, of all the patients she'd lost, of the pieces of herself that had broken off with each passing. In this quiet room, at this impossible hour, the walls she'd built around her heart felt dangerously thin. Then, against all medical expectation, Sophia's fingers twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Emma froze, wondering if exhaustion was making her hallucinate. But no. The woman's eyes opened, revealing irises of such a deep amber they appeared almost golden in the low light. "Water," came the raspy whisper, accented in a way Emma couldn't immediately identify. Eastern European, perhaps. Moving quickly, Emma reached for the cup on the bedside table, holding the straw to parched lips. The woman took small sips, her gaze never leaving Emma's face. "Thank you," she said, her voice stronger now. "You have kind eyes." Emma blinked in surprise. "You weren't supposed to wake up," she said, immediately regretting her bluntness. "I mean, your condition was terminal?" A ghost of a smile touched the woman's lips. "Yes, I imagine it appeared so." Emma reached for the call button, but Sophia's hand caught her wrist with unexpected strength. "Please, not yet." Something in that commanding tone made Emma hesitate, her finger hovering over the button. Against all professional protocol, she lowered her hand. "You should be seen by a doctor," Emma said. "In time." Sophia's gaze was unnervingly direct. "First I need to know, where am I exactly?" "Steve." "Michael's Hospital in Boston." "Boston." Sophia repeated, closing her eyes briefly. How far we've come, Emma frowned. Ms. Renault? That is not my name. The woman's eyes opened again, sharper now. Though I thank you for your care. Emma, is it? Emma nodded, increasingly certain she should call for the doctor, yet strangely reluctant to break this moment. My real name is Sofia Karadzic. She paused, studying Emma's face for recognition that wasn't there. Queen Regent of Vardonia. The declaration hung in the air between them. Emma felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat but suppressed it. This woman clearly had confusion, possibly delusions, not uncommon in patients who had been unconscious for days. I understand this must sound improbable to you, Sophia continued, her dignity undiminished. But I assure you it is the truth. And I believe you just saved my life with nothing more than your compassion. Emma's nursing training kicked in. Ms. She stumbled over the address. You've been unconscious for 3 days. It's normal to feel disoriented. Let me get the doctor. 3 days, Sophia murmured. Then they must believe they've succeeded. Who? The people who poisoned me. The steady beep of the heart monitor punctuated the silence that followed. Emma should dismiss this as the ramblings of a confused patient. But something in the woman's clear gaze, the careful precision of her words, gave her pause. I don't understand, Emma said finally. No, you wouldn't. Sophia's expression softened. But you stayed with me. You held my hand when you thought I was dying. Why? The simple question struck Emma like a physical blow. She looked down at their still joined hands, surprised to find they remained connected. Because, her voice caught, because no one should die alone. Sophia nodded slowly, as though Emma had confirmed something important. The simplest kindnesses are often the most profound. She tried to sit up, wincing with the effort. Emma immediately adjusted the bed, her professional instincts overriding her confusion. Please, you need to rest. Whatever's happening, we can sort it out after the doctor examines you. There isn't time, Sophia said, but allowed herself to be settled back against the pillows. I need your help, Emma Matthews. The use of her full name startled Emma. How did you— Your badge, Sophia said, with the faintest hint of amusement. I'm not quite as mystical as I might seem. Emma glanced down at her ID badge, feeling foolish. Right. Look, Ms. Karadzic, I want to help, but you think I'm delusional. A confused old woman who believes herself royalty. Sophia twisted the ring on her finger, then with effort that clearly cost her, removed it and extended it to Emma. Perhaps this will help convince you. Emma hesitated before accepting the ring. It was heavier than it looked, the metal warm from Sophia's skin. The crest was intricate, a mountain range behind what appeared to be a falcon in flight, surrounded by unusual script. The royal seal of Vardonia, Sophia explained. A country smaller than your Rhode Island, nestled in the Balkans between larger nations that have coveted our lands for centuries. We maintain our independence through diplomacy, discretion, and occasionally, secrets. Emma turned the ring over in her palm, her exhaustion-addled mind struggling to process the situation. She had a vague recollection of a country called Vardonia from world geography, a small nation known for its neutrality and mineral resources. But a queen, here in her hospital? If you're really a queen, Emma began carefully, why were you alone in a hotel? Where's your security, your entourage? An excellent question. Sophia's expression darkened. I was in America unofficially, meeting with certain financial interests regarding our country's rare earth mineral deposits. My presence was meant to be confidential, known only to a select few within my government. She paused, a shadow crossing her face. It appears one of those few has betrayed me. The steady beep of the monitors filled the silence as Emma tried to make sense of the story. It sounded fantastical, like something from a political thriller, and yet, the toxicology report, Emma said slowly, recalling the details from Sophia's chart. There was an unknown substance in your bloodstream. The doctors couldn't identify it. Hope flickered in Sophia's eyes. You believe me? I don't know what to believe, Emma admitted. But I know what I've seen. You were dying and now you're not. That's not normal. No, it's not. The poison was likely derived from a plant that grows only in the mountains of my country. It mimics death before actually causing it, a favorite of our ancient assassins. Sophia's voice was matter-of-fact, as though discussing nothing more unusual than the weather. The antidote requires specific herbs, or apparently the touch of a compassionate soul. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. I didn't do anything medical. I just held your hand. Sometimes that is medicine enough. Sophia's expression grew urgent. Emma, I must contact my loyal advisors, but I cannot risk using hospital phones or computers. There are people who believe me dead, and for now, that misconception is my only protection. Emma ran a hand through her tangled hair, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. Even if this woman was telling the truth, an enormous if, what could Emma possibly do? She was just a nurse, running on fumes after a double shift, with barely enough energy to drive herself home. I don't see how I can help, she said finally. You already have, Sophia replied. But I must ask for more. I need a place to recover, away from official scrutiny, until I can safely contact my allies. Her golden eyes held Emma's. I need sanctuary. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Emma thought of her empty apartment, of the extra bedroom that had once been intended for a nursery in a future that never materialized. She thought of her professional oath, her responsibility to the hospital. She thought of the consequences of harboring a potentially delusional patient, or worse, an actual foreign dignitary targeted for assassination. This is crazy, Emma whispered, more to herself than to Sophia. Yes, Sophia agreed simply. But sometimes the world is crazy. And sometimes one person's kindness is all that stands between chaos and hope. The night seemed to hold its breath around them. Emma knew what the sensible answer was. She should press the call button, summon the doctor, and let the proper authorities handle this strange situation. That was the safe choice. The right choice. Instead, she found herself asking, how would we even get you out of here? Sophia's smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. I have always found that the simplest solutions are often best. I believe your shift is ending soon? Emma nodded slowly, a plan already forming in her exhausted mind. She had no idea if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or stepping into something extraordinary. But as she looked into Sophia's determined eyes, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Purpose. I'll need to get a wheelchair, she said quietly. And we'll have to time this carefully. I place my life in your hands, Emma Matthews, Sophia said, with a gravity that sent shivers down Emma's spine, just as I did when you thought I was dying. Outside the window, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the Boston skyline. A new day was coming, and with it, a journey neither woman could have anticipated when darkness fell. The morning shift change was always chaotic, a perfect cover for what Emma still couldn't believe she was doing. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she wheeled Sophia, now dressed in scrubs borrowed from the staff locker and a surgical mask, to protect her compromised immune system, toward the service elevator. Just act normal, Emma muttered, as much to herself as to her royal patient. I find that excellent advice in most situations, Sophia replied, her accent carefully muted, hands folded calmly in her lap despite the enormous risk they were taking. They passed the nurses' station where bleary-eyed night shift staff were handing over to their fresher morning counterparts. Emma nodded to a colleague who barely glanced up from the chart she was reviewing. No one questioned why Emma was transporting a patient. Nurses did everything these days, with staffing what it was. The service elevator arrived with a quiet ding. Empty. Emma released the breath she'd been holding and maneuvered the wheelchair inside. The security cameras? Sophia asked as the doors closed. They don't record in the service areas. Budget cuts, Emma explained. And the garage level has had a broken camera for months. Administration keeps promising to fix it. Sometimes bureaucratic inefficiency is a blessing, Sophia observed, and Emma caught a glimpse of humor in those amber eyes. They reached the parking garage without incident. Emma's ancient Honda Civic sat in its usual spot, dusty and dented but reliable. Getting Sophia from the wheelchair to the passenger seat was more difficult than Emma had anticipated. The dying woman was still weak, her legs unsteady. Sorry, Emma murmured as Sophia winced in pain. Almost there? You've nothing to apologize for, Sophia said, her breathing labored from even this small exertion. I'm the one who should be sorry for involving you in this. Emma secured the seatbelt across Sophia's body, then folded the wheelchair and stowed it in her trunk. She'd have to return it later somehow. Just another detail in this increasingly complicated situation. As they drove past the security booth, the guard waved without looking up from his phone. Emma waved back, her smile stiff, pulse racing. And then they were out, merging into early morning Boston traffic, the hospital receding in the rearview mirror. I can't believe we just did that, Emma said, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Sometimes the most audacious plans succeed precisely because no one expects them, Sophia said. She had removed the surgical mask and was gazing out at the city with keen interest. "You handled yourself admirably. Are you certain you have no background in covert operations?" A surprised laugh escaped Emma's lips. "Pretty sure. The most rebellious thing I've ever done before today was call in sick to go to a concert in college. And yet here you are, abducting a foreign monarch. When you put it that way, it sounds even worse." Emma navigated a turn, heading toward her Jamaica Plain apartment. "I could lose my nursing license for this. Probably face criminal charges. If it provides any comfort, in my country you would be granted the highest honors for your service." "Great. I'll remember that when I'm in federal prison." Despite her words, Emma felt an unexpected lightness in her chest. After months of moving through life like a ghost, she was suddenly, undeniably present. Every sense was heightened, the morning sunlight more golden, the air coming through the cracked window more invigorating. Sophia studied her with that penetrating gaze. "You are afraid, yet you helped me anyway. Why?" The question hung between them as Emma navigated through the morning traffic. Why indeed? She had no answer that made logical sense. "I don't know," she admitted finally. "Maybe I'm too tired to think straight. Maybe," she hesitated. "Maybe I needed to believe in something again, even if it's completely crazy." Sophia nodded slowly. "Faith often appears as madness to others, but it is the foundation of all great actions." They drove in silence for several minutes, Emma lost in thoughts of what awaited them, Sophia watching the city pass by with the alert eyes of someone accustomed to assessing unfamiliar territories. Emma's apartment building was a 3-story brick structure, unremarkable among its neighbors. She parked in her designated spot and turned to Sophia. "It's nothing fancy," she said, suddenly self-conscious about bringing royalty to her modest home. "And I haven't had much time to clean lately. I have slept in mountain caves while evading Serbian forces during my country's border disputes," Sophia replied. "I assure you, any accommodation you provide will be luxurious by comparison." Emma helped Sophia from the car, supporting her with an arm around her waist. The woman was lighter than she expected, her body frail beneath the borrowed scrubs. The poison, or whatever it was, had clearly taken a severe toll. They made slow progress up the stairs to Emma's second-floor apartment. By the time they reached her door, Sophia was trembling with exertion, her face pale. "Almost there," Emma encouraged, fumbling with her keys. She pushed the door open, revealing her small, sparsely furnished living room. A faded couch faced a TV she rarely watched. A bookshelf held medical texts and a few novels she'd never found time to read. The walls were bare except for a single photograph of her parents on their 30th anniversary, taken 2 years before her father's diagnosis. "Welcome to my palace," Emma said with awkward humor. Sophia leaned more heavily against her. "It has something much more valuable than gilded ceilings," she said softly. "It has safety." Emma guided her to the couch, where Sophia sank down with visible relief. In the morning light streaming through the windows, she looked both more regal and more vulnerable, a paradox Emma couldn't quite reconcile. "You need rest," Emma said, slipping back into nurse mode. "And probably antibiotics. I can get some from the hospital. What I need first is a secure way to contact my people," Sophia interrupted. "A telephone that cannot be traced." Emma frowned. "I don't exactly keep burner phones around. My cell is the only phone I have. Your neighbors? Perhaps someone has a landline?" "Nobody has landlines anymore. And I barely know my neighbors." Emma ran a hand through her hair, the adrenaline that had carried her through their escape beginning to ebb, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Look, I need to think. And you need to rest. We'll figure out communication after we've both had some sleep." Sophia looked ready to protest, then nodded, seeming to recognize the wisdom in Emma's words. "You're right, of course. Neither of us is in condition to make sound decisions. A few hours' delay will make little difference now." Emma helped Sophia to the guest bedroom, a space that contained little more than a bed and a dresser. She found a clean t-shirt and sweatpants, setting them on the bed. "The bathroom is across the hall. There are towels in the cabinet if you want to shower." Emma hesitated. "Do you need help?" "I believe I can manage," Sophia said with dignity. "You've done more than enough already." Emma nodded and turned to leave, but Sophia's voice stopped her. "Emma!" The softness in her tone made Emma turn back. "Thank you. Not just for this sanctuary, but for sitting with me when you thought I was dying. I've been surrounded by people my entire life, yet I've often felt alone. In what I believed were my final moments, I wasn't alone because of you. That is a debt I can never truly repay." The sincerity in those amber eyes made Emma's throat tighten. "Get some rest, Your Majesty." she said, the formal address feeling strange on her tongue. "Sophia, please. Titles have little meaning when one has fled one's kingdom." Emma nodded and closed the door softly behind her. In her own bedroom, she didn't even bother changing out of her scrubs before collapsing onto her bed. Questions swirled in her exhausted mind. Was she harboring an actual queen or a delusional woman? Was she saving a life or participating in an international incident? Was this the worst decision she'd ever made, or somehow, against all odds, the right one? Sleep claimed her before she could find answers, pulling her into darkness deeper than any she'd known in months. Emma woke to the smell of cooking food and the sound of quiet movement in her kitchen. For a disoriented moment, she thought she'd dreamed the entire bizarre episode with the dying queen. Then reality crashed back and she sat bolt upright in bed. The clock read 4:17 p.m. She'd slept for nearly 8 hours. Sunlight streamed through her window at a late afternoon angle, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. She found Sophia in the kitchen, dressed in Emma's borrowed clothes, stirring something on the stove. The woman looked remarkably improved, her posture straight, her movements more fluid, though still measured. "You shouldn't be up," Emma said, her nurse's instincts kicking in. Sophia turned, a small smile playing at her lips. "Good afternoon to you as well. I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of preparing a meal. You had limited ingredients, but I managed to create a reasonable approximation of a Vardonian recovery soup." Emma approached the stove warily, peering into the pot. The soup was rich-looking, with vegetables, and what appeared to be the remains of a rotisserie chicken she'd forgotten was in her refrigerator. "You cook?" The question came out more incredulous than she'd intended. "I wasn't born a queen," Sophia replied, amusement in her voice. "Before politics claimed my life, I was known for my culinary skills. Besides, every Vardonian learns basic cooking as part of our education, a tradition dating back to times when poisons were common political tools." She gestured with the wooden spoon. Knowing how to prepare one's own food was a survival skill. Emma's stomach growled loudly, reminding her that she hadn't eaten a proper meal in over 24 hours. "It smells amazing," she admitted. "It's nearly ready. Perhaps you'd like to freshen up first?" The suggestion, delivered with subtle diplomacy, made Emma suddenly aware of her rumpled scrubs and the stale hospital smell that clung to her. "Right. I'll be quick." 10 minutes later, showered and dressed in clean clothes, Emma sat across from Sophia at her small kitchen table, a bowl of steaming soup before her. The first spoonful was a revelation, rich flavors of chicken, vegetables, and unfamiliar herbs spreading warmth through her body. "This is incredible," she said, taking another spoonful. "What's in it?" "Family secrets," Sophia replied with a hint of mischief. "Though I had to substitute certain herbs. Your dried oregano made an acceptable replacement for mountain savory." They ate in companionable silence for several minutes. Emma studied Sophia surreptitiously across the table. In the soft afternoon light, without the harsh hospital fluorescence, the woman's regal bearing was even more evident. In the straightness of her spine, the deliberate grace of her movements, the watchful intelligence in her eyes. "You're looking better," Emma observed. "The color's back in your face." "I am feeling stronger," Sophia agreed, "though not yet at my full capacity. The poison takes time to fully leave the system." She set down her spoon. "But we cannot afford to wait for my complete recovery. I must contact my loyal advisors today." Emma nodded slowly, her brief respite from reality ending. "I've been thinking about that. Public phones are hard to find these days, and using my cell phone would create a record." "Indeed. And we must assume that whoever orchestrated my poisoning has resources to monitor communications." The casual way Sophia referenced assassination attempts sent a chill down Emma's spine. This was real. Whatever strange path she'd stumbled onto yesterday morning in room 512, it had led her into a world of international intrigue far removed from her everyday life of medication schedules and patient care. "There's an internet cafe about 6 blocks from here," Emma said, the plan forming as she spoke. "It's not fancy, but they have private booths and pay-as-you-go computers. No ID required." "That could work," Sophia said thoughtfully. "I would need to send an encrypted message through channels known only to my inner circle. Can you walk that far? 6 blocks isn't nothing in your condition." Sophia's expression hardened with determination. "When I was 23, I walked 12 kilometers through mountain terrain with a bullet wound in my shoulder to reach safety during our civil conflict. 6 blocks on flat city streets will be manageable." Emma blinked, reminded again that the elegant woman across from her had lived a life unimaginable to most Americans. "I'll find you some better clothes and a hat," she said. "The less you look like, well, you the better." An hour later they set out. Sophia wore jeans that were too long, rolled at the ankles, a plain t-shirt, and a Red Sox cap pulled low over her silver-streaked hair. Despite the humble attire, she carried herself with unmistakable dignity, something Emma realized couldn't be disguised with mere clothing. "Try to slouch a little," Emma suggested as they walked slowly down the sidewalk. "You look too important." Sophia cast her an amused glance. "I've spent decades being instructed to improve my posture, and now you wish me to undo all that training." "Just for a few blocks," Emma said. "Think of it as going undercover." "Very well." With visible effort, Sophia relaxed her shoulders and adopted a more casual gait. The transformation was subtle but effective. She now appeared to be simply an elegant older woman, rather than someone who expected crowds to part before her. The internet cafe was tucked between a laundromat and a convenience store, its windows plastered with faded advertisements for international calling cards and printing services. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of coffee and electronics. A bored-looking young man with multiple piercings barely glanced up from his phone as Emma paid for an hour of computer time. They chose a booth in the back corner, positioned so Sophia could see the entrance while Emma's body blocked the screen from casual observation. The computer was older but functional. "Do you know how to—" Emma began, then stopped as Sophia's fingers moved confidently over the keyboard, navigating through screens with practiced ease. "I may be from a small nation, but we are not technologically backward," Sophia said without looking up. "In fact, Vardonia has one of the highest rates of internet connectivity in Eastern Europe." Emma watched as Sophia accessed what appeared to be a normal travel website, then entered a complex sequence in the search field. The page transformed, revealing a simple message interface. "Our Royal Secure Communication Channel," Sophia explained quietly, disguised as a booking system for a small tour company that, officially, arranges cultural experiences for visitors to Vardonia. She typed rapidly, the message in a language Emma couldn't read. Her expression was focused, intense, years seeming to fall away as she worked. This was not a confused patient or a frail old woman. This was a leader in her element, commanding and precise. After several minutes, Sophia sat back, her eyes never leaving the screen. "Now we wait. For how long?" "That depends on who is monitoring the channel. Under normal circumstances, a response would come within minutes. But if the situation in Vardonia is as compromised as I fear," they didn't have to wait long. Less than 5 minutes later, text appeared on the screen. Sophia read it quickly, her expression tightening. "What is it?" Emma asked, tension coiling in her stomach. "My death has been officially announced in Vardonia," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the bizarre nature of her words. "A state funeral is being planned. My nephew Victor has declared himself the rightful successor and is moving to consolidate power." "Your nephew is behind this?" Emma's mind reeled at the Shakespearean implications. "It appears so." Sophia's fingers moved over the keyboard again, typing another message. "Victor has always been ambitious, but I never thought he would go this far. He has aligned himself with certain foreign interests who would like access to our mineral resources on terms that would be devastating for our people." The response came even faster this time. Sophia read it, then closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, there was new resolve in her gaze. "My loyal security chief, Drazen, is alive and in hiding. He suspected Victor's involvement but had no proof until now. He's gathering a trusted team to extract me and help me reclaim my position." She turned to Emma. "They can be in Boston within 24 hours. Relief flooded Emma. Soon, this would be someone else's problem, someone with the training and resources to handle international political intrigue. "That's good, right? You'll have protection, get back to your country." "It's not that simple," Sophia interrupted. "Victor will have people watching airports, train stations, any obvious point of departure. And if he learns I'm alive?" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "So what happens now?" "We maintain this sanctuary for one more day," Sophia said. "Drazen will contact us with a secure extraction plan." She looked directly at Emma. "I know I have already asked too much of you. If you wish to distance yourself from this situation, I would understand completely." The honorable out hung between them. Emma could walk away now, return to her normal life, pretend the last 24 hours had never happened. It would be the sensible choice, the safe choice. but as she looked into Sophia's amber eyes, she remembered holding the woman's hand in what she thought were her final moments. She remembered the connection that had formed between them, unexpected, inexplicable, but undeniably real. "One more day," Emma heard herself say. "I can do one more day." Sophia's smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Then let us finish here and return to your home. We have preparations to make." As they left the internet cafe, Emma noticed a black sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there when they arrived. A man in sunglasses sat behind the wheel, apparently engrossed in his phone. Probably nothing, she told herself, just normal city life. But the prickle of unease that ran down her spine suggested otherwise. They took a circuitous route back to Emma's apartment, doubling back and changing direction several times at Sophia's quiet instruction. Emma felt ridiculous, like she was playing at being a spy in some low-budget thriller. But the gravity in Sophia's expression kept her from protesting. "Are we being followed?" Emma finally asked as they paused in a bookstore, pretending to browse while Sophia watched the street through the window. "I'm not certain," Sophia admitted. "It may be ordinary paranoia, a survival trait I've developed over decades of political life. But something about that man in the car, how would anyone even know to look for you here? The hospital thinks you're dead or dying. In my experience, information has a way of flowing through unexpected channels." Sophia replaced the book she'd been holding without seeing it. "We should continue. I believe we've been stationary long enough." The remainder of their journey passed without incident, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. By the time they reached her apartment building, her nerves were frayed, every passing car suddenly suspicious. Inside her apartment, Sophia moved directly to the windows, checking the locks and adjusting the blinds to allow her to see out while preventing anyone from seeing in. The practiced efficiency of these actions reminded Emma again that the elegant woman in borrowed clothes was not just a patient or a refugee, but someone accustomed to security threats. "We should prepare for the possibility that we may need to leave quickly," Sophia said, turning from the window. "Is there a back exit to this building?" "Fire escape from the bedroom window," Emma replied. "Leads to the alley behind the building." Sophia nodded approvingly. "Good. Pack a small bag with essentials, only what you can carry easily. Include your identification and any cash you have available." "This is getting more real by the minute," Emma said, the full weight of the situation finally settling on her shoulders. Sophia's expression softened. "I know this is far beyond what you signed up for when you sat with a dying stranger. If I could shield you from the complications of my life, I would." "It's not that," Emma said, surprising herself with the realization as she spoke. "It's just, my life has been so small lately. Work, home, sleep, repeat. Nothing unexpected. Nothing that mattered beyond the walls of the hospital." She met Sophia's gaze. "And suddenly, here you are, and everything matters in ways I can't even comprehend." "Sometimes fate has plans we cannot anticipate," Sophia said quietly. "I believe there is a reason our paths crossed, Emma Matthews." The conviction in her voice sent a shiver down Emma's spine. Before she could respond, her phone rang, the sound startlingly loud in the quiet apartment. She pulled it from her pocket, frowning at the unfamiliar number. "Don't answer it," Sophia said sharply. Emma's finger hovered over the screen. "It could be the hospital. If I don't answer, they might send someone to check on me." "Put it on speaker then. Say as little as possible." Emma accepted the call, holding the phone between them. "Hello? Emma Matthews?" A male voice, unfamiliar, with the faintest trace of an accent. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Dr. Anton Petrovich. I'm calling regarding a patient you attended recently at St. Michael's. A Ms. Sophia Renault." Emma's eyes met Sophia's, who shook her head in warning. "I attend many patients," Emma said carefully. "What about Ms. Renault? There have been some unusual developments in her case. We need to speak with all staff who had contact with her in the past 72 hours. I'm off duty until tomorrow night," Emma said, trying to keep her voice casual. "Can this wait until then?" "I'm afraid not. This is a matter of some urgency." The man's voice hardened slightly. "Perhaps we could meet today? I could come to your residence. We have your address on file." Cold fear slid down Emma's spine. No doctor would make such a suggestion. It violated every protocol of patient confidentiality and professional boundaries. "That won't be necessary," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I can come to the hospital in a few hours." "Excellent. Please come to the administrative offices on the 5th floor. Ask for me by name." There was a pause, and Ms. Matthews? "Please don't discuss this call with anyone. Patient privacy concerns, you understand." The call ended. Emma stared at her phone, heart hammering against her ribs. "They know," she whispered. "Yes," Sophia agreed grimly. "And they know where you live? We need to leave. Now. But your security team won't be here until tomorrow. We cannot wait." Sophia was already moving toward the bedroom, her earlier weakness seemingly forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. "How quickly can you be ready?" Emma forced her frozen limbs into action, following Sophia. 5 minutes, she said, pulling a backpack from her closet and beginning to throw in essentials. Clothes, toiletries, her nurse's ID, the emergency cash she kept in her nightstand. "Make it 3, Sophia replied, checking the fire escape through the bedroom window. "I believe we have company." Emma rushed to join her at the window. On the street below, 2 men in dark suits were approaching the building entrance. There was nothing overtly threatening about them, but their purposeful stride and the way they scanned their surroundings sent warning signals blaring through Emma's mind. "Who are they?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Either Victor's men or mercenaries he's hired," Sophia said, her voice calm despite the dire circumstances. "Either way, they're not here for a friendly visit." Emma zipped her backpack closed with shaking hands. "Ready?" Sophia nodded approval. "The fire escape, then. Do you have somewhere we can go? Somewhere not connected to your official records?" Emma thought frantically. Her parents' house was out. It would be the first place anyone would look. Friends from work were too connected to her daily life. Then an idea struck her. "My ex-fiancé's fishing cabin," she said. "It's about 2 hours north in Maine. Remote. We bought it together, but after we split, I never used it. My name isn't on any of the current paperwork. He bought out my share." "Does he use it regularly?" "No, he moved to California after we broke up. It sits empty most of the year." Sophia considered this. "It could work. Do you have transportation?" "My car, but..." Emma froze as a realization hit her. "It's registered to this address. They'll be looking for it. Then we need alternative transportation." Sophia moved to the window and unlatched it. "One problem at a time. First, we leave this apartment." The fire escape was old and rattled ominously as they descended, Emma leading the way, Sophia following with surprising agility for someone who had been near death less than 24 hours ago. They reached the alley just as shouting erupted from inside the building. The men had reached Emma's apartment and found it empty. "Move quickly, but don't run," Sophia instructed quietly. "Running attracts attention." They walked briskly through the alley and emerged onto a parallel street, Emma's mind racing through options. They needed transportation that couldn't be traced back to her. "The T?" she suggested, referring to Boston's subway system. Sophia shook her head. "Too many cameras. And we'd be trapped underground with limited exit points. We could call a taxi, traceable. And we'd need to provide a destination." They turned a corner, putting more distance between themselves and Emma's apartment. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as commuters hurried home around them, no one paying attention to the 2 women walking purposefully among them. "I know someone," Emma said suddenly, an idea forming. "My neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy. She's in her 70s and doesn't drive anymore, but she keeps her old car just in case. She's always offering to let me borrow it. Would she ask questions? Probably, but she's also a sucker for romance. If I tell her I'm running off for a spontaneous getaway with..." Emma faltered, a blush rising to her cheeks. Sophia raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth despite their dire situation. "With your mysterious older lover? Something like that. A plausible cover story. Where does this Mrs. Abernathy live?" "3 buildings down from mine, but on the next street over. We can circle around to the back. She always sits in her garden this time of day." They changed direction, moving through residential side streets. Emma led them to a small, well-kept house with a garden that bloomed defiantly in the limited space of an urban lot. As predicted, Mrs. Abernathy sat in a lawn chair, a book open on her lap, her white hair gleaming in the late afternoon sun. "Emma, dear," the older woman called as they approached through the garden gate. "What a lovely surprise. Hi, Mrs. Abernathy," Emma said, forcing brightness into her voice. "This is my friend Sophie." Sophia stepped forward with a warm smile, instantly adapting to the role of friendly visitor. "A pleasure to meet you. Emma has spoken highly of you." Mrs. Abernathy beamed, clearly delighted by the attention. "Any friend of Emma's is welcome here. Come sit. I'll get some lemonade." "Actually, Mrs. Abernathy," Emma said quickly, "we're in a bit of a hurry. I was wondering if I could take you up on your offer to borrow your car." The older woman's eyebrows rose in surprise, then a knowing smile spread across her face as she looked between Emma and Sophia. "I see," she said, a twinkle in her eye. "A little getaway, is it?" "Yes," Emma said, the blush returning to her cheeks. "It was a spontaneous decision." "Mrs. Abernathy chuckled. "About time you had some adventure in your life, Emma. You work too hard." She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and produced a set of keys. "The old girl hasn't been driven in months, but she should start right up. Just bring her back with a full tank." "Thank you," Emma said, taking the keys with a surge of relief. "I can't tell you how much this means." "Oh, I think I can guess," Mrs. Abernathy replied with a wink at Sophia, who responded with a dignified smile that somehow managed to convey exactly what the older woman wanted to see, the elegant older lover whisking Emma away for a romantic tryst. "We should be back in a few days," Emma said. "Take your time, dear. The Buick doesn't get enough use these days anyway." Mrs. Abernathy lowered her voice conspiratorially. "And you deserve some happiness after that fool Thomas left you." Minutes later, they were in Mrs. Abernathy's 20-year-old Buick, Emma behind the wheel, navigating through side streets toward the highway north. "Your neighbor is perceptive," Sophia observed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "She's been trying to set me up with everyone from her grandson to her dental hygienist for the past year," Emma replied, checking the rearview mirror for any sign of pursuit. "She'll be dining out on this story for months. Better she thinks we're lovers than fugitives." The word hung in the air between them. Fugitives. That's what they were now, running from men who would kill a queen and who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate a nurse who got in their way. "I still can't believe this is happening," Emma said, merging onto the highway northbound. "Yesterday I was just a tired nurse working a double shift. Now I'm helping a foreign monarch escape assassins." "Life rarely follows the paths we anticipate," Sophia said, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "My mother used to say that destiny doesn't ask permission before it changes your course." "Is that a Vardonian saying?" "No," Sophia smiled softly. "Just a mother's wisdom, something that translates across all borders." They fell into companionable silence as the city gave way to suburbs, then to the more open landscapes of northern Massachusetts. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In the golden light, Sophia's profile was regal and timeless, like something from another era. "May I ask you something personal?" Emma said finally. "After everything you've done for me, you may ask anything you wish. Why don't you have security? I mean, before all this happened. Aren't queens supposed to have bodyguards and, I don't know, people who taste their food?" Sophia laughed, the sound warm and unexpectedly youthful. "Vardonia is not a wealthy nation. We cannot afford the trappings of monarchy that you might see in larger countries. I do have security for official functions, but I've always preferred a certain discretion in my movements." She looked out the window, her expression growing more serious. In truth, it was that preference for privacy that made Victor's plan possible. "I came to America with only one aide, my assistant Mara, who has been with me for 30 years. We were supposed to meet with certain financial interests regarding Vardonia's rare earth mineral deposits." Her voice tightened. "Mara disappeared the morning I fell ill. I fear she may have been Victor's first victim." "I'm sorry," Emma said softly. "As am I. She deserved better than to be a casualty of political ambition." They crossed the state line into New Hampshire as dusk settled around them. Emma's eyes burned with fatigue. The adrenaline that had carried her through their escape was ebbing, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "We should stop soon," Sophia observed. "You've been awake too long and fatigue makes one vulnerable?" "We're only halfway there," Emma protested. "And the cabin will still be there in the morning. Your neighbor's car is unlikely to be on any watch list yet. We can afford a few hours' rest." Emma wanted to argue, but the heaviness of her eyelids made the decision for her. At the next exit, she pulled off the highway and found a small motel, the kind of anonymous roadside establishment that asked few questions of its guests. Using cash from Emma's emergency fund, they secured a room with 2 beds at the far end of the building. The room was basic but clean, with faded floral bedspreads and a television that probably dated from the previous decade. "It's not exactly royal accommodations," Emma said apologetically as she locked the door behind them. "It's perfect," Sophia replied, moving to check the bathroom and the window locks with practiced efficiency. "Anonymous and defensible." Emma set her backpack on one of the beds and sank down beside it, the events of the day catching up with her all at once. "I should call the hospital," she said suddenly. "Tell them I won't be coming in tomorrow. If I just don't show up, they'll file a missing persons report. Use the room phone, not your cell." Sophia advised. And be vague about your reasons. Emma nodded and picked up the bedside phone, dialing the familiar number of the nursing administration office. At this hour, she knew she'd get voicemail, which was preferable. No questions to answer. "This is Emma Matthews," she said after the beep. "I need to take emergency personal leave for the next few days. Family situation. I'm sorry for the short notice." She hung up, knowing the message would cause administrative headaches but unable to see an alternative. "You handled that well," Sophia said, settling onto the other bed. "Brief and uninformative, yet plausible." "I've never called out without a real emergency before," Emma said, guilt mingling with her exhaustion. "They're already short-staffed." "This is a real emergency?" Sophia pointed out. "Just not one you can explain on a hospital voicemail." Emma managed a tired smile. "I guess you're right." They ordered pizza from a local delivery place, paying in cash when it arrived. As they ate sitting on their respective beds, Emma found herself studying Sophia. The precise way she folded her napkin, the elegant economy of her movements, the watchful alertness that never quite left her eyes even in this moment of relative safety. "What is it like?" Emma asked suddenly. "Being a queen, I mean." Sophia considered the question, setting aside her pizza. "It is a life of contradiction," she said finally. "Great power coupled with great constraint. The ability to command thousands, yet often the inability to speak one's own mind freely. Do you like it? Like is not a word I would use. It is simply what I am." Sophia's expression softened. "There are moments of profound satisfaction when a policy I've championed improves the lives of my people, when I can represent Vardonia on the world stage with dignity. But there are also great loneliness and sacrifice." "No family?" Emma asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. "Sorry, that's none of my business." "It's a natural question," Sophia said gently. "My husband died 15 years ago. We had no children, a source of national concern in my younger years, but less relevant now that I'm past childbearing age." A shadow crossed her face. "Had we had children, perhaps Victor would not have felt entitled to the throne." "He's your brother's son?" "Yes. My older brother died in a mountain climbing accident when Victor was just a boy. I took special interest in his upbringing, making sure he had every advantage." Bitterness tinged her voice. "I thought I was preparing him to be a worthy successor. Instead, I was training my would-be assassin." The weight of this betrayal hung in the air between them. Emma tried to imagine how it would feel to nurture someone, to invest in their future, only to have them try to kill you. The magnitude of such betrayal was almost incomprehensible. "I'm sorry," she said inadequately. Sophia nodded, her composure returning. "Enough about royal intrigue. Tell me about you, Emma Matthews. Who is the woman brave enough to smuggle a foreign monarch out of a hospital and across state lines?" Emma laughed despite herself. "There's not much to tell. I grew up in Worcester. My dad was a high school science teacher, my mom a librarian. Pretty normal childhood. And yet you chose a profession dedicated to caring for others at their most vulnerable. That speaks to character." "I like helping people," Emma said simply, "and I'm good at it. Or I was before." "Before what?" Sophia prompted gently when Emma didn't continue. Emma stared at her hands, surprised to find herself wanting to confide in this woman she barely knew. "Before I started burning out. Before my dad died of cancer last year and my fiancé left and my mom started forgetting who I was. Before everything that mattered seemed to slip away." The words hung in the motel room, more honest than she'd been with anyone in months. She hadn't even admitted these feelings to herself until this moment. "I'm sorry," Sophia said, and unlike the empty platitudes Emma had heard too often, these words carried genuine understanding. "Loss reshapes us in ways we cannot predict." "Yeah," Emma agreed quietly. "It does." Sophia rose from her bed and crossed to sit beside Emma, taking her hand with a gesture that felt both regal and deeply human. "You have shown extraordinary courage and kindness, Emma Matthews. Not just in helping me escape, but in sitting with a dying stranger when you thought no one would know or care." Emma met her gaze, struck by the sincerity in those amber eyes. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Sophia said firmly. "They would not. Believe me, I have seen enough of humanity to know true compassion when I encounter it." She squeezed Emma's hand. "Rest now. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, and you will need your strength." As Emma settled under the covers, fatigue washing over her in waves, she found herself wondering at the strange twist of fate that had brought this extraordinary woman into her life. For months, she had been going through the motions, her world growing smaller with each loss. Now, paradoxically, even as she fled from unknown dangers, she felt more alive than she had in a very long time. Sleep claimed her quickly, dreamless and deep. Emma woke to sunlight filtering through thin motel curtains and the smell of coffee. Sophia sat in the room's single chair, 2 paper cups from the motel office on the small table beside her. "Good morning," Sophia said, looking remarkably composed for someone sleeping in a roadside motel while fleeing assassins. "I took the liberty of acquiring caffeine. I've been told it's an essential part of the American morning ritual." Emma sat up, running a hand through her tangled hair. "You went outside? Is that safe?" "I was careful," Sophia assured her. "And sometimes blending in means acting normally. Hiding in the room would attract more attention than a woman getting coffee for herself and her traveling companion." Accepting this logic, Emma took the offered cup gratefully. The coffee was surprisingly decent, hot and strong. She sipped it slowly, letting reality reassert itself after the disorientation of sleep. "Any news?" she asked. "I borrowed your phone while you were asleep," Sophia admitted. "I hope you don't mind. I needed to check if Drazen had made contact." Emma blinked in surprise. "My phone is password protected." A small smile played at Sophia's lips. The security protocols of modern smartphones are impressive, but not impenetrable to someone who has dealt with international espionage for decades. "You hacked my phone?" Hacked is perhaps too technical a term. "Let's say I made an educated guess about your password. Your father's birthday is a common choice." Emma stared at her, caught between admiration and alarm. "Did Drazen contact you?" "Yes." Sophia's expression grew more serious. "He's in the country with a small team. They've tracked our movements as far as New Hampshire but lost the trail when we switched vehicles." "That's good, right? If they can't find us, Victor's people can't either." "In theory, yes. But it means we need to establish contact with Drazen at a time and place of our choosing, somewhere secure." Emma nodded, her mind shifting to practical matters. "We should reach the cabin by noon if we leave soon. It's isolated, no neighbors for at least a mile in any direction. We can contact Drazen from there." "Excellent." Sophia rose, her movements displaying more of her natural grace than they had the previous day. The rest had clearly done her good. "Shall we continue our journey?" They checked out of the motel an hour later, after showers and a quick breakfast from the vending machines. The day was clear and bright, a perfect New England summer morning that seemed at odds with the tension that still hummed beneath their casual facade. Back on the highway, Emma found herself relaxing slightly as the miles passed. There was something soothing about the simple act of driving, of having a clear destination and purpose. Beside her, Sophia watched the landscape with interest, occasionally asking questions about the towns they passed or the history of the region. "You seem to know a lot about America for someone from a small European country," Emma observed. "International relations are a necessary specialty for the ruler of a nation positioned between larger powers," Sophia replied. "And I've always had a personal interest in America. Your country's experiment in democracy has been both inspiring and cautionary for smaller nations like mine." They crossed into Maine just before 10, the landscape growing more rural, more densely forested. Emma turned off the main highway onto smaller state roads, then eventually onto a winding gravel road that led deeper into the woods. "Almost there," she said as they bounced over ruts in the poorly maintained road. "It's not much, but it's private." The cabin appeared around a bend, a small, weathered structure perched on the edge of a lake that glittered in the late morning sun. It was simple but solid, with a covered porch and windows that reflected the surrounding pines. "It's beautiful," Sophia said, genuine appreciation in her voice. "Reminds me of the hunting lodges in our northern mountains." Emma parked the car beside the cabin and cut the engine. The sudden silence was profound. No traffic noise, no city sounds, just the whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant call of a loon on the lake. "Thomas and I bought it 4 years ago," Emma said, a twinge of old pain in her voice. "We were going to spend our summers here, maybe retire here eventually. After we split, I couldn't bear to come back. And yet you've brought me here," Sophia observed quietly. "Thank you for sharing this place." Emma shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "It was the only safe option I could think of." They approached the cabin cautiously, Emma leading the way to a weathered planter where Thomas had always kept a spare key hidden beneath a false bottom. To her relief, it was still there, tarnished but functional. The cabin's interior was dusty but otherwise unchanged from her last visit nearly 2 years ago. Rustic furniture, a stone fireplace, a small kitchenette with dated appliances. The air was stale but cool, preserved by thick log walls against the summer heat. "No electricity," Emma explained, opening windows to let in fresh air. "There's a generator out back, but we'll save that for emergencies. Propane stove and refrigerator, well water for the sink and shower. Basic but functional." Sophia nodded approvingly. "Self-sufficient and off the grid. Ideal for our purposes." They spent the next hour settling in, checking supplies, clearing dust, making the space habitable. Emma found canned goods in the pantry that were still good, propane in the tanks, and clean linens in the bedroom closet. Thomas might have abandoned their relationship, but he'd maintained the cabin with his usual fastidious attention to detail. By early afternoon, they had a simple meal of canned soup and crackers laid out on the small dining table. As they ate, Sophia outlined her plan. "We'll contact Drazen this evening using a secure channel accessible through your phone. He'll need precise coordinates for this location." "And then what?" Emma asked. "He comes here with his team and takes you back to Vardonia?" "Essentially, yes. Though the path back to Vardonia will be complicated." Sophia's expression grew somber. "Victor will have secured the usual entry points. We'll need to enter through a neighboring country, then cross the border clandestinely. Once on Vardonian soil, we'll need to gather loyal forces before making my survival public." The scale of what Sophia faced struck Emma anew. This wasn't just about escaping immediate danger. It was about reclaiming a nation, confronting a treasonous nephew, rebuilding a shattered government. "It sounds dangerous," she said inadequately. "It is." Sophia met her gaze directly. "Which is why you will remain here safe once Drazen arrives. Your involvement ends at that point." Emma nodded slowly, surprised by the conflicting emotions the statement evoked. Relief, certainly, but also an unexpected disappointment. In the past 2 days, her life had expanded beyond its tight boundaries, filled with purpose and urgency that had been missing for too long. "What will happen to Victor?" she asked. "When you return, I mean." "Justice will be served," Sophia said, her voice hardening. "In Vardonia, treason against the crown is punishable by death. However," she paused, conflict visible in her eyes, "he is my brother's son. I raised him after his father died. Perhaps there is room for mercy, depending on his actions upon my return." Emma was struck by the complexity of Sophia's position, the need to balance justice with personal history, national security with family bonds. It was a burden few could understand, let alone carry with such dignity. "I hope you find the right answer," she said simply. Sophia smiled faintly. "As do I." They cleaned up their meal in companionable silence. Outside, the afternoon sun cast dappled shadows through the pine branches onto the cabin's porch. The peaceful scene stood in stark contrast to the international intrigue that had brought them here. "I'm going to check the perimeter," Sophia announced, moving toward the door with purpose. "Basic security protocol?" "Do you want company?" Emma offered. "Thank you, but I prefer to do this alone. Old habits from military training in my youth?" She paused at the door. "Besides, it gives me time to think." Emma watched through the window as Sophia walked the property's edge with methodical precision, her posture straight, her movements deliberate despite the casual clothes she wore. Even here, miles from civilization, she carried herself like the queen she was. Left alone in the cabin, Emma busied herself with small tasks, checking supplies, searching drawers for anything useful, taking inventory of their resources. In the bedroom closet, she found a dusty shotgun that Thomas had kept for protection against wildlife. She had never fired it, had in fact argued against having it in the cabin, but now she was grateful for its presence. She was examining the weapon, trying to remember what little Thomas had taught her about its operation, when a sound from outside made her freeze. Not Sophia's footsteps, something else. A crack of a branch, too heavy to be wildlife. Moving cautiously to the window, Emma peered out through a gap in the curtains. At first, she saw nothing but the peaceful forest scene. Then a shadow moved between trees at the property's edge, a human figure dressed in dark clothing, moving with deliberate stealth. Cold fear washed over her. Someone had found them, but how? They'd been so careful. Her eyes darted around the cabin, searching for Sophia, but the queen was nowhere in sight. Had they already captured her? Or was she hidden, watching as Emma now watched? The shotgun felt heavy and awkward in her hands. Emma had never fired a weapon at another person, had dedicated her life to healing, not harming. But the memory of the men in dark suits approaching her apartment building, the cold voice on the phone asking about Sophia, these were not people who would hesitate to kill. A sudden sound at the back door made her whirl, raising the shotgun instinctively. The door opened, and Sophia slipped inside, her expression grave. "We have company," she said quietly, eyes immediately finding the weapon in Emma's hands. "I see you've noticed. Who are they? How did they find us?" "I count at least 3 men, professional by their movements." Sophia moved to Emma's side, gently adjusting her grip on the shotgun. "Tracking devices are my guess. Either on your cell phone or what? Or the poison did more than nearly kill me. Some compounds can leave trace elements in the bloodstream that can be tracked with the right equipment." The implication was chilling, that Sophia had been marked for death so thoroughly that even her survival had been planned for, accounted for. "What do we do?" Emma asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "We have 2 options. Attempt to flee through the woods. Difficult terrain, unknown factors, but the advantage of movement. Or we stand our ground here, defensible position, known environment, but ultimately a trap if reinforcements arrive." The decision hung between them, heavy with consequence. Emma thought of the miles of forest surrounding them, the unfamiliar terrain, Sophia still recovering her strength. Then she thought of the cabin's solid walls, the limited points of entry, the shotgun in her hands. "We stand our ground," she said with more confidence than she felt. "At least until dark. Then we can reassess." Sophia nodded, approval in her eyes. "A sound tactical decision. We need to secure the entrances and prepare defensive positions." What followed was a crash course in cabin defense, directed by a woman who had clearly seen combat despite her royal status. They barricaded the doors with furniture, covered windows to prevent sightlines inside, identified the most defensible positions within the small space. Throughout it all, Sophia remained calm, her instructions clear and precise, as though turning a vacation cabin into a fortress was a routine task. "They'll likely wait until dusk to make their move," Sophia said as they finished their preparations. "Darkness gives them cover for approach, and they'll assume we have no night vision capabilities." "Do we have a plan for when they come?" Emma asked, the shotgun now loaded and within reach as she crouched near the front window. "We hold them off as long as possible. I've sent an emergency signal to Drazen with our coordinates. If he's within range, he'll come with his team. And if he's not within range?" Sophia met her gaze steadily. "Then we fight until we can't." The simple statement sent a chill through Emma. This was real, not a thriller movie, not a video game. Real danger, real death, stalking them through the lengthening shadows of the pine forest. "I'm scared," she admitted, the confession escaping before she could stop it. "Good," Sophia replied without judgment. "Fear keeps you alert. Only fools feel no fear in the face of danger. Do you? Feel fear, I mean." "Constantly." A small smile touched Sophia's lips. "It has been my companion through civil unrest, assassination attempts, international crises. The trick is not to eliminate fear, but to make it work for you rather than against you." The wisdom in those words resonated with Emma. How often had she felt fear in the ICU, fear of making a mistake, fear of losing a patient, fear of not being enough, and yet she had functioned despite it, sometimes even because of it, the fear sharpening her focus when it mattered most. The afternoon stretched into evening, tension building with each passing hour. They spoke little, conserving energy, maintaining vigilance. As dusk settled over the forest, the bird song faded, replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to press against the cabin walls. "They're moving," Sophia whispered suddenly, her gaze fixed on a gap in the curtains covering the front window. 3 figures approaching from different angles. Coordinated assault. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, her mouth dry with fear. She checked the shotgun one last time, praying she wouldn't have to use it. "Remember," Sophia said quietly, "we only need to hold them off until Drazen arrives. Conserve ammunition. Make each shot count if it comes to that." The minutes stretched like hours as darkness enveloped the cabin. Emma strained to hear movement outside, but whoever approached did so with professional silence. Then, a soft scraping at the back door. Someone testing the barricade. Sophia motioned for Emma to stay low as she moved to a better vantage point. The quiet was shattered by a sudden crash as a window broke in the bedroom, followed by the distinctive metallic clank of something landing on the floor. "Down!" Sophia commanded, diving toward Emma and pulling her to the floor just as a deafening bang and blinding flash erupted from the bedroom. "Stun grenade?" Sophia explained through the ringing in Emma's ears. "They're coming in now." The front door splintered inward despite the barricade, kicked open with tremendous force. A dark figure moved through the opening, weapon raised. Without hesitation, Sophia threw the hunting knife she'd found in the kitchen drawer, her aim precise. The man grunted in pain, his weapon clattering to the floor as the knife embedded in his shoulder. Emma raised the shotgun with shaking hands, pointing it toward the doorway but unable to pull the trigger. A second figure appeared, and this time Sophia lunged forward physically, years of training evident in the economy and precision of her movements. There was a brief struggle, then the man went down, Sophia's knee pressed into his throat. "Emma, the window!" Sophia shouted. Emma turned just in time to see the third attacker climbing through the front window, his weapon trained on Sophia's back. Without conscious thought, Emma swung the shotgun like a club, catching the man across the face with the butt. He staggered backward, falling half in and half out of the window. The momentary advantage wouldn't last. The first man was already regaining his feet despite the knife in his shoulder, and the one beneath Sophia was struggling violently. They were professionals, trained killers, and despite Sophia's surprising combat skills, they were outnumbered and outgunned. Then, through the ringing in her ears, Emma heard it, the distinctive sound of helicopter blades cutting through the night air, growing louder by the second. "Drazen," Sophia said, triumph in her voice even as she struggled to maintain her hold on her opponent. The approaching sound clearly alarmed their attackers. The man Emma had struck scrambled back through the window, abandoning his attempt to enter. The one with the knife wound backed toward the door, shouting something in a language Emma didn't understand. Powerful lights suddenly illuminated the clearing around the cabin, bright as day despite the fallen night. Through the broken window, Emma could see a black helicopter hovering above the tree line, spotlights sweeping the property. Dark figures rappelled from its open doors, moving with military precision toward the cabin. The attackers were retreating now, running for the cover of the trees, but the newcomers were faster, more numerous. Within minutes, shouts and brief bursts of gunfire indicated the pursuit was over. The cabin door opened, and a tall man with close-cropped gray hair and a weathered face entered, his weapon held ready but not raised. When he saw Sophia, relief washed over his features. "Your Majesty," he said, inclining his head in a gesture that somehow conveyed both military efficiency and deep respect. "Drazen," Sophia replied, her composure instantly restored despite the chaos of moments before. "Your timing is impeccable. We came as soon as we received your signal." His eyes moved to Emma, assessing her with a glance. "And this must be the nurse who saved your life." "Yes. Emma Matthews, my friend and protector." Sophia's voice carried a warmth that made the formal introduction feel deeply personal. "She has shown extraordinary courage." Emma stood awkwardly, still holding the shotgun, unsure of the protocol for meeting a Queen's security chief after a firefight in a cabin in rural Maine. "Thank you for protecting Her Majesty," Drazen said simply, but the look in his eyes conveyed a depth of gratitude beyond the words. More men entered the cabin, securing the space with practiced efficiency. One attended to the attacker Sophia had subdued, zip-tying his hands and checking him for additional weapons. Another spoke rapidly into a communication device, reporting in a language that must have been Vardonian. "The extraction team is ready, Your Majesty," Drazen announced. "We have a secure location prepared. From there, we can begin the operation to return you to Vardonia." Sophia nodded, then turned to Emma. In that moment, something passed between them, an acknowledgement that their extraordinary journey together was coming to an end. "Emma will need protection," Sophia said to Drazen, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Victor's people know her identity, her connection to me. She is not safe here. We've already arranged it," Drazen assured her. "A security detail will remain with Ms. Matthews until the situation in Vardonia is resolved." "That's not necessary," Emma began, but Sophia cut her off with a gentle touch to her arm. "It is absolutely necessary," she said firmly. "I will not have you endangered because of your kindness to me." Emma wanted to protest further, but recognized the wisdom in Sophia's words. The men who had attacked them knew her face, her name. Until Sophia was securely back on her throne and Victor neutralized, Emma would remain a loose end they might want to tie up. "What happens now?" she asked instead. "Now I return to reclaim what is mine," Sophia said, her voice carrying the full weight of her royal authority. "And you return to your life, albeit with some additional security for a time." The simplicity of this statement belied the enormity of what it meant. Sophia would fly back across an ocean to face a treasonous nephew, rally loyal forces, and potentially fight a civil conflict. Emma would go back to her nursing shifts, her empty apartment, her quiet existence, forever changed by these few extraordinary days, but outwardly returning to normalcy. "I'll never see you again, will I?" The question slipped out before Emma could stop it, vulnerability evident in her voice. Sophia's expression softened. "I would not be so certain of that, Emma Matthews. Fate has connected us in ways neither of us could have predicted. I suspect it is not finished with us yet." Before Emma could respond, Drazen approached, urgency in his bearing. "Your Majesty, we must depart. Our intelligence suggests Victor has dispatched additional teams to this region." Sophia nodded, the brief moment of personal connection giving way to the necessities of her position. "Of course." She turned back to Emma, reaching out to clasp her hands. "I cannot adequately express what your kindness has meant to me. You saved more than just my life. You may have saved an entire nation." "I just did what anyone would do," Emma said, the familiar deflection automatic. "No," Sophia corrected gently. "You did what only you would do. Never diminish the light you bring to this world, Emma." With that, she released Emma's hands and straightened, once again every inch a queen despite her borrowed clothes and the chaos surrounding them. She moved toward the door, Drazen and his men forming a protective formation around her. At the threshold, she paused, looking back one last time. "Remember what I said about fate, Emma. This is not an ending, merely a pause in our story." Then she was gone, swept away into the night, the sound of the helicopter growing fainter as it lifted off and disappeared into the darkness. Emma stood in the doorway of the damaged cabin, watching until the lights were no longer visible, feeling as though something profound had slipped through her fingers before she could fully grasp it. Two of Drazen's men remained behind, professional and courteous but clearly tasked with her protection rather than her comfort. They explained that they would escort her back to Boston the following day, that arrangements had been made for her security, that she need not worry about any legal complications from the events of the past days. That night, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Emma sat on the cabin's porch, gazing up at stars more visible here than they ever were in the city. One of her guards maintained a respectful distance, vigilant but unobtrusive. She thought about the woman who had entered her life so unexpectedly, a dying patient who became a fleeing queen, a stranger who became something close to a friend in the pressure cooker of danger and shared purpose. She thought about how, for the first time in months, she had felt fully alive, fully present in her own life. What would happen now? Would she return to her nursing shifts? To the quiet desperation that had become her normal? Or had something fundamental shifted within her, some spark reignited that couldn't be extinguished by a return to routine? The stars offered no answers, but as she traced their patterns in the velvet sky, Emma felt a strange certainty that Sophia had been right. This was not an ending. Somehow, in some way she couldn't yet imagine, their paths would cross again. 3 months later, Emma stood at the nurse's station, reviewing charts as she had countless times before. Life had largely returned to its familiar rhythms: work, home, occasional visits to her mother's care facility. The security detail Drazen had assigned remained discreetly present for the first month after Sophia's departure, then gradually withdrew as the situation in Vardonia stabilized. Emma had followed the international news with keen interest, reading between the lines of diplomatic statements and press releases. There had been reports of political restructuring, in Vardonia vague mentions of continuity of leadership, and internal matters resolved peacefully. Nothing explicitly confirming Sophia's return to power, but nothing suggesting Victor had maintained his illegitimate claim either. "Matthews," the charge nurse's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You have a visitor in the lobby. Says it's important." Emma frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors during shifts were discouraged. Did they give a name? Some official-looking guy with an accent. "Said to tell you it's about a mutual friend." Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be? She handed off her current patient assignment to a colleague and made her way to the lobby, trying to temper her expectations. Drazen stood near the entrance, his military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes. When he saw her, he inclined his head in that same gesture of respect she remembered from the cabin. "Ms. Matthews," he greeted her. "Thank you for seeing me." "Is she—" Emma began, then caught herself. "Is everything all right?" "Her Majesty is well," he assured her. "Fully restored to health and to her rightful position." Relief washed over Emma. "And Victor?" facing justice, though with certain mercies granted at Her Majesty's insistence. Family ties run deep, even in the face of betrayal. Emma nodded, understanding the complexity of Sophia's position all too well. I'm glad to hear she's safe. Is that why you've come? To update me? Partly, Drazen admitted, but I also bring an invitation. He reached into his jacket and produced an envelope of heavy cream-colored paper, sealed with what Emma recognized as the royal crest of Vardonia. Her Majesty requests your presence at a special ceremony in Vardonia next month. All arrangements have been made should you choose to accept. Emma took the envelope with trembling fingers, the weight of it somehow significant beyond its physical presence. What kind of ceremony? The establishment of a new Royal Humanitarian Foundation. Her Majesty wishes to honor those who demonstrate exceptional compassion in service to others. A rare smile crossed Drazen's weathered face. The first honoree has already been selected. Understanding dawned slowly. Me? But I didn't do anything special. Her Majesty anticipated you might say that. Drazen interrupted gently. She asked me to remind you that sometimes the most profound acts are those we consider ordinary, and that the light we bring to others' darkness matters more than we can know. Emma looked down at the envelope in her hands, the royal seal glinting in the lobby lights. Inside was an invitation to step once more into Sophia's extraordinary world, not as a nurse protecting a patient this time, but as an honored guest in a royal court. Will you accept? Drazen asked after a moment of silence. Emma thought about her life these past months, how she had returned to her routines but carried with her something new, a spark of purpose rekindled during those dangerous days with Sophia. She thought about the empty apartment that no longer felt like a place of loss, but a space of possibility. She thought about Sophia's words on the night they parted. This is not an ending, merely a pause in our story. Yes, she said, certainty filling her voice. I accept. Drazen nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Her Majesty will be pleased. She speaks of you often, you know. The nurse who saved a queen with nothing but compassion. As he turned to leave, he paused, looking back at Emma with newfound respect. She said something else I was to tell you, should you accept. What's that? That sometimes fate brings together the most unlikely people for the most important reasons, and that true healing works in both directions. With that cryptic message, he departed, leaving Emma standing in the hospital lobby, the royal invitation clutched in her hands, the promise of a new chapter waiting to be written. In the months and years that followed, Emma would travel to Vardonia many times, forming a bond with Sophia that transcended their extraordinary first meeting. The Royal Humanitarian Foundation would become her passion, a way to channel her nursing skills and compassion on an international scale. She would find purpose beyond what she had ever imagined possible, her world expanding far beyond the hospital corridors where she had once felt trapped. And it had all begun with a simple act of kindness, an exhausted nurse holding the hand of a dying patient, not knowing she had just saved the life of a lost queen.